Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
All right. Welcome to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel and
I'm Nicole Saunders.
Nicole, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
You just keep coming back, so I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun.
I do. I enjoy our conversations, Chris. I think they're insightful.
Yeah, I do too. And that's why we keep doing this. And we think it's important for our audiences to kind of, listen to some seasoned veterans, I guess, right? So
yeah.
At least, look, people keep coming, so we'll keep doing this. And today's topic is, and you tell me if I get this right, is kind of embedding community and people maybe inside different parts of the organization. And you had a way better thought there. And I'd like maybe you kick it off, because you said it way better than I could.
Well, I think the thing that you and I have been chatting about a bit lately, and I think it's a common theme whenever I go out and speak or share my thoughts on community management. It all comes back to that, how you're tying community to the business, right? But really specifically, the thing that's been on my mind lately is how the teams are structured. The industry's gone through a lot of change. We've seen some layoffs. We've seen some contractions. At the same time, we have seen some investment in community programs because businesses are seeing it as a way that they can scale things in a cost-effective way. And so even as teams are shrinking, we're still seeing good support and investment in community. And so what does that mean, right? Is that just everybody doing more with less? To some extent, yeah, probably a little bit. But really what struck me is that decentralization of the community team. And the State of Community Management report from the Community Roundtable came out recently. And one of the things I thought was really interesting, they were kind of talking about this decentralization, right? And really what that means is in the past, or sort of historically, and even the way that I was thinking about things until somewhat recently, was that like all of the community team should sit on one team, right? And build up under one community head, and they own everything that the company considers community. And one, that doesn't scale super well because most community teams can't be like Salesforce and have, dozens of people.
And even they probably complain that they don't have enough people.
Oh, I'm sure, right? Because community is just like this infinitely growing thing everywhere. Exactly. And two, there are so many things that are community that you can't have one team own all of it across the entire business. And so what we're starting to see, and the model that I'm starting to follow, is having the community team become that center of excellence where you're training people on other teams, you're building out resources, you're setting sort of overall strategy and policy and governance, but you're training people on other teams to help with community functions. And we're even going so far as starting to embed community roles on other teams. We have a new role that is coming up on our product operations team. So they're just going to sit within the product org, and community now sits on the customer marketing team. So a totally different part of the business. But they're going to be the community product feedback specialist. And so that person's job is going to be to work in our community, work with the customer feedback, get it into the product org, and then sort of do the same and close that conversation loop of bringing that back out to the community. And there's a debate of if that person should sit on my team and be cross-functional to product, or sit on the product team and be cross-functional to us. And at first I was nervous to let this role live under someone else. Yeah. I love that manager. Don't get me wrong. She's amazing. But it was sort of like, I don't know about how I feel about community functions not being directly under my purview. But I've come full circle on that and realized how great it is that the rest of the business is starting to see community as integral enough, as integrated enough, that we actually want community roles in other teams that have a strong dotted line to me, right? Like this person will probably come to my team meetings and be heavily working with us, but embedded in that part of the business. And so we can dig into that a little bit, but also running parallel to that is talking about how do you align your community really truly to the business?
Yeah.
And you and I were chatting a bit about like attribution metrics, right? And how we show financial impact. And one of the things that you and I have both done is gone to our marketing teams and said, well, how do you guys measure stuff? Mm-hmm. How do you do attribution? How do I get a line item in that report? Or how do I include community in that dashboard rather than being an outlier that is reported on and measured differently?
That's right.
putting things in the terms that your company leaders are already looking at it. And so it's not like community is this weird thing off to the side that nobody gets, but rather it's really seen as just another part of the business. And that's not to downplay the importance of it. But I think over the years, as community has evolved, we have tended to be this sort of silo, this outlier, this group where it's a question of where we should sit. And I feel like we've sort of hit a turning point in the last couple of years where we're starting to be a more common part of the business, be more aligned to it. And I think it's the smartest thing you can do, because an outlier is an easy thing to cut out or to push off to the side or to deprioritize, but something that's really integrated into all of these programs, you can't deprioritize that. And
I love
you're going to look at it the same way as everybody else looks at it.
And I've got so many thoughts going in my head, but I want to try
to
keep
I just said a whole bunch of things.
You did. And so, but as I was kind of thinking about it, like I was going to get off into, the metrics and marketing and whatever, but I want to kind of go back to what you said about, hey, you're looking at a role that is in the product operation team that will report into the product operations, but it's kind of a community-minded person. So what I want you to do is walk through kind of your thinking around what is that person going to do from as far as and how are they going to work with you and the team? Because I think, for you to say that's awesome, and I want to hear it because it sounds awesome, but I want to get an understanding of what that means to you and, kind of their role, what they're doing, how they work with you and the team and things like that, because I want to make this real, right?
Yeah.
Because it is real. And I want to understand that because I think that's really, really cool that you're doing that.
Well, so the first thing, you got to start at the conception of the role, right? And one of the things that we've known for a long time is that the community is a great place to get feedback from our customers, but it's challenging. Every company I know that does product feedback in a discussion forum struggles with, how do I take these thousands of pieces of feedback I'm getting and put it into a format that makes sense to my product teams, and then get them to actually put some of that into the roadmap, and then come back to the community and say, hey, so these 27 requests over here, we're building something to solve for all of those problems. It's not any one of those solutions, but it's this thing that's going to encompass all of these, right? Like that's a very hard communication loop. And we've been trying to do it as sort of like parts of people's roles. And we realized we needed somebody who could be fully focused on this, who could really understand the customer needs, and who could really understand what was going on in the product org, not just getting a quarterly roadmap update and then going and updating, yes, this is on the roadmap, no, this isn't, but actually synthesizing and sort of facilitating and moderating that conversation at large across those two groups. And so when the product operations team and I sat down and said, okay, we're going to get a head count, where should they sit? And at first I was like, well, I want them on my team because I want control over everything in the community. And I think that that's where a lot of this comes from, is like, we don't trust everybody else to do things in a community-minded way. But that's what enablement's all about. And that's what being a center of excellence is all about, is helping other people to get there and be able to do it. And so the more I thought about it, I was like, we've been trying to solve this problem from seats on my team for a long time.
Yeah.
And the thing that has been missing is that we aren't in all of the product all hands and the roadmap meetings and those discussions. And frankly, like we don't have time to be. And so I realized like the value is going to be, it would be easier to take somebody who's in all of those product meetings and talk to them about how to bring that information back to the community, facilitate that conversation, than take someone who's just sitting in the community and be like, okay, here's 150 people you need to go have a relationship with, go build that out and figure out how to communicate and get into all of their meetings. And so we decided it would sit on the product org, but that it would be a very tight collaboration. And then as we wrote the job description, I made sure that it included things like, required experience in a community as well as experience with product development. And so as part of writing that job description, I helped source candidates, I promoted it out to the community networks. And we did end up hiring somebody that's got a strong community background, but now is going to be able to really build out a product operations skill set. And so I think that that's going to be a really amazing fit in terms of those kinds of things. And this role hasn't started yet. So we'll see what the day-to-day looks like. But what I'm imagining is that their onboarding is going to be a lot of like introduction to the community, introduction to the product, understanding the processes, because it's an operational role. They're going to need to understand, okay, what is the processes today? How do we do this today? And then identifying where is that working well? Where is it not working well? What's failing? And then starting to problem solve for whatever those gaps or challenges are. I think the trickiest thing, we were talking a lot about putting together the onboarding materials this week. And one of the things we had to really get aligned with is like, we need to be objective in this. We need to not have this person come in and be like, okay, here's everything that we see that's wrong, but rather give them the opportunity to come in and see it with clear eyes and start identifying things, and not bringing along the baggage of like, well, we asked about that solution 5 years ago and someone said no, so clearly we can't do that. Right.
Right.
Well, that was 5 years ago. It was a different company back then. Yeah. And so, I'm imagining this person's going to spend probably 50-50 time between my team and the product operations team. Some weeks that may vary. If we're in a heavy development cycle, they might spend more time hanging out with the product org. If we're starting to deliver a bunch of stuff, they might be spending more time in the community, communicating all of that out. And so it's an experiment. It'll be interesting to see how it goes, but I'm really excited about it. And I love this idea of having community-minded people in other teams, because they can represent us in rooms that we're not in meetings that we're not in. They can bring insights from other parts of the business back to us, and we can use that to inform things. And so I really see my team, like I said, as that center of excellence, that super cross-functional team that is taking in inputs and then doing trainings and enablements and creating resources and creating processes and bringing more and more people into the community. And ultimately, that's what you want. You want it threaded throughout the business. That's what makes it valuable to users. That's what makes it valuable to the company. And that's honestly, at the end of the day, what makes it work effectively.
Yeah. What I like about that is, you mentioned this earlier, is, when there's an idea that a customer wants to put out there, right? And you can imagine, one is all the ideas that you build this ideation kind of thing, platform, and let customers put in their ideas. The biggest opportunity is how do those ideas kind of funnel to product, and then how does product go back in to answer those things? And then, are we going to do this idea? Are we not going to do this idea, or enhancement or whatever? And so I definitely, and it's like sometimes community should own that, but then when it does, then we're not really close to the business or to the product teams to really kind of drive that. I've even had that problem, right? Like, it's like, well, we could put this on the community, but I still need somebody from product to manage this and whatever, but it doesn't work. Like, it's what we've done now. I'm sure there's some companies that have done some things that really does work, but right now and even at my company and past company used to, somebody would put an idea out there and it would just go into a black hole. You know what I mean? Like, and nobody would manage that. So I like this, and I know they're going to do more than just ideas, but I like how you're thinking. And I think you got to think different, because what we've been doing over the last 10 years hasn't worked. What I mean? So,
and this is the thing, in this,
for that particular team, right?
Right. So, product feedback is always going to be a challenge, right? It's
always
going to be a little bit bigger than any one person can manage. And that's the thing, is I'm also not pretending that this person is like the silver bullet solution for this problem. Yeah. It's just the person that will focus on helping us figure out on how to solve that problem. But, I think it's really key to have those inputs from all of those different parts of the business and be bringing it together. It's going to be interesting to see how it works. And, I'll come back and let you know what the result is. But I think it's also like, as teams are being a little bit leaner and a little bit tighter, there are some things that maybe you don't need an FTE to run, but maybe you need half of someone's time. And that's right. Could that half of someone's time be someone that already exists on another team, where you're sort of doing like role sharing or something like that? And at the end of the day, I just think it's better. I think that you get more diverse inputs into the community strategy, and you get more parts of the business that are hearing about community on a regular basis, because someone on their team is talking to them about community and is working in the community space. And the whole idea of the community is it's supposed to be everybody, right? It's not just the community team to the customers, but it should be the whole business. And so this is a great way to bring that together. And as I said, also align what we're doing in community with other business processes, so that we're not this weird outlier that's got like, our own unique way of doing things, but we're saying, hey, how does the product team take in feedback from other sources? Great. Can we align the community feedback to that? how does the events team report on attribution for their events? Great. Can we report on community events the same way? And really sort of bring it into all of those threads.
I like it. And I'll give you a couple of ways that I've been thinking about it. And you've actually given me some ideas. And so there's a couple of ways. One is I have kind of this halftime person that, he's pretty junior, but he's in marketing and he reports to somebody else in the team, but he does a little bit of stuff for me. It's very tactical, but he's running some of the webinar programs. This guy is also learning how to do marketing type programs. He's running the drift campaigns and things like that, and so he's getting a lot of, experience in those things. So for him, it's really good, I think, for him as a growth opportunity. And then, for me, it helps kind of do some of the things that I just don't have time for. And I know we're talking about something a little different, but it's funny. So just even as a recent, yesterday, I had a webinar, and it's really cool because inside Reltio, we have alliance managers and things like that. So they work with our partners. And so this one alliance manager came to me about 4 weeks ago. He said, "Hey, Chris, get this company that," and I know them really well, one of our partners that want to get more engaged and involved in community. I said, "Great, let's get him on the phone." He got the CEO on the phone, and I was like, "All right, I knew he's done some stuff for us in the past." Yeah. And I was like, "All right." I was like, "Let's," he goes, "What can we do in community? What can we, what are some things?" And so I gave him like 5 or 6 things you can help answer questions. As a matter of fact, one of your guys in India is really killing it with answering tons of questions on community. Here's his name, and he's like, yeah, we love that guy. He's awesome. That kind of stuff. And then he goes, "What else can we do?" And so I was like, "Well, we could do webinars and things like that." And so, what we did was eventually we got one of his thought leaders on the phone, and we did a webinar for one of our for the community. And so I think we had 100 plus people show up to it. It's really cool. And so what we did was there was a joint kind of thing, right? So I sent out the information to the community, and then we did a social post. They did a social post. They sent emails out, and it was really fun to see. The key though there is the working with the alliance managers as kind of, the people that are already there to start doing more of those. So how do I get more partners to do thought leadership type stuff or very technical type webinars instead of our own people doing those all the time? And so, I see that as an opportunity of really kind of, sourcing that out to some of these alliance managers at Reltio. They work in the sales team, right? And so, I think that, how do you, if you can't get the FTE, even how do you work with others within the organization to help you? Because that guy came to me knowing that it would be super successful, that because community's already embedded a lot into the organization, and he knows, he's been to some of the shows. So he knew that getting a partner on, would be really cool. And it was. And so I think that, there's a lot of ways to kind of do that. And when people start coming to you to do things, not to say you can do it all because I can't, but I've got this guy here in marketing helping me part-time. I've got this alliance manager helping me do some stuff. So the teams are coming together to really provide value to our customers and partners, and that relationship between that partner that did the webinar for us, really strengthened that. They were excited because there was 129 people on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of things to kind of work out in between that. But I think that's key is how do you embed, whether it's finding that FTE that can work within that team, like in your case, the product team, to understand what's going on. Because you just can't know everything. Nicole,
no, you can't.
It's pieces that but
right. Well, and it's interesting. Last week, you and I were talking a lot about the user groups program that we've been launching. We were chatting about that a little bit this morning before we got on the recording too. And let's think about the user groups model, right? And the whole idea is that you are developing enablement materials and resources, and you're training end users who are really excited to run groups on your behalf, right? And we were talking about how great it is that can really scale your program. It's the same logic, just with internal teams.
Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about starting to work with, right. And it's when you think about internal teams, one, I think that community managers, we've tended to be a little defensive and protective of our space. We don't want other people muddling. We feel sometimes like, oh, well, they're not going to get it and they're just going to come in and try to sell to people. But we trust our end users who are members of the community to facilitate events. So we should extend that trust to our coworkers and our colleagues too. And maybe you have to do a little bit more sort of talking about things. But the way I've always positioned is like, look, we know that our community members aren't going to show up to things just to get marketed to or just to get sold
That's
to.
right.
And so we have to really be providing value for them. So even as I'm working with a marketing or sales team, I'm helping them understand there is a place for you here. I do want your help.
Yeah.
We just got to like tweak the way we interact a little bit. It might be a little different than your day-to-day. Some of the things that are really important to have as you start working cross-functionally and enabling people on other teams, you have to have a clear vision.
Yeah.
Another thing the State of the Community Management Report talked about is the importance of having definition around your community. And so I actually made a deck that's like about the community. And it's like, here's what it is. Here's the programs it encompasses. Here's our mission. Here's our vision. And it's like, we got really specific with language around like, we are here to connect users to one another and to knowledge. We want to give them access to subject matter experts and valuable information. And everything we do is driven by those tenets. And if we're doing something that's not connecting people to other people, that's not about having conversation and discussion, then it shouldn't be in the community space. It's not the right thing to be doing. And that was a big key for us, especially when we started working, like we work with our product marketing team on producing our community events. And we were like, we got to do these differently than other webinars. We can't just have us presenting information that satisfies the information part, but doesn't satisfy the conversation part. And if it's a community event, we have to have a well-staffed chat. We have to have opportunities for people to come on camera and ask questions if they want to. We have to have a discussion with them. We're not going to pre-record it. We're going to do it live and make it really authentic.
That's what I do.
And that was such a key to it. And so I think that's the thing is, it's so important to go work with those teams, but you got to like have your ducks in a row, right? Have that about the community deck, know your core value proposition and your pillars of your program, if you will. Define the things that will help other teams understand how to engage with the community. We even went as far as putting together a style guide, and we have our own branding kit so that when people are writing, if I go back and say, hey, this is too markety, they go like, well, what does that mean? Right. And I say, well, we have a conversational style in the community. We try to avoid using jargon. We write full words out instead of using, acronyms for things. We try to be aware that this is a global audience. And so we're not using overly complex language, that kind of a thing, because a lot of people might be reading this with English as their second or third language, and that's fine, but we have to make sure it's approachable for everybody. And we're talking about technical difficult things. Let's make sure we're putting it in simple language for them. So all of that goes into how you bring other people into the community and how you can scale. And let's face it, most community teams, the big community teams are still, 5 or 6 people, and most teams are still 1. And so you have to be partnering with other parts of your business if you're going to be successful in scaling your community.
Completely agree. You should do you gave me a topic opportunity. I think one of the things that you should think about is presenting here on Peers Over Beers, kind of your vision, mission, things like that. You don't have to put the presentation on screen or anything. We don't do video anymore. So maybe that's a topic, because I think, people would love that, I think, to understand how you kind of position community internally. So anyways, well, that's really good. And I think, before you also mentioned that, you and I have done, I feel like a fairly good job of integrating kind of some of our webinars, or in your case, your user group type activity directly into your marketing kind of stuff, to where now you can look at influence revenue. And even more importantly, you can say, and we mentioned this at the very beginning before we even started, was that you guys look at closed deals that, user groups help with, right? I mean, can you talk more about that? Or is that that's embedding directly into the marketing team, right? And so I think that's important.
Right. Yeah, I can't speak exactly to the metric, honestly, because a lot of that is, some of it's proprietary and some of it's just the team that does that knows a lot more about it than I do. But the key is we are
just a high level is really what I was trying to get at.
So, the marketing team has developed a metric where they look at all the different touch points that a customer might have with the business, right? And then these things are like looked at over time, right? So if say a customer closes a $10,000 contract, we're going to look back over the couple weeks preceding that, maybe even the couple months. I'm not really sure what the date range is, and understand, okay, did they have a call with their sales rep? Did they go to a webinar? What emails did they open? What are all of the different things that happened? And then each of those teams get attributed a percentage of that deal, right? And so
that's right.
And you can look at it, like you were saying, from multiple levels, right? You can look at revenue that you've influenced. You can look at new pipeline that's been generated. And then you can look at what has actually closed. And so we look at those numbers from a couple different levels to understand how we're impacting the business. We didn't do that for a long time.
Yep.
We were trying to come up with like our own community metrics for things. And eventually I just said, hey, let's just figure out how other teams measure this. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We're different from what they do, but we're not so different that we can't measure it in the same way.
It's still activity.
It's still activity. And once that number started showing up on dashboards, right? Yeah. And like, here's the dashboard, like, here's what each of the marketing teams are doing, and here's the community number. It really gave some context to how we fit into the picture, what we were doing. And it kind of normalized us in a way, right? It made us like just part of the business. And I think, part of maybe what you're getting at is I was talking earlier about how a big goal for me is always to make sure that my program is paid for. Yeah. That we are generating enough attributed revenue that, I like to show like, hey, by March, we covered all of our software costs. By July, we covered all of our, the team costs and things like that. And now everything we do above that is earning money for the business. And, those are just examples of months. I can't tell you exactly what it looked like this year, but it's important to be thinking about that. And often I think that community is one of those things that can be thought of as a cost center, much. We tend to be thought of as an extension of support, even when we sit in other teams.
That's right.
It can be thought of as a cost center because we oftentimes have struggles in measuring our financial impact. And if you can start to demonstrate that you are having that positive impact on revenue, on expansion, on customer retention, you're going to be looked at in a different light. And that results in more resourcing, right? When I say, hey, you guys, do you like this number? Would you like to see it double next year? Great. Here's what I need in order to get that. Yeah. They're not going to say no, right? Any executive is going to look at something. And if you're sitting there saying, I have a way that I know that I can help generate more revenue for the business, more customer satisfaction, more customer retention, I just need, I need half of the product operations person's time, or I need a little bit more budget to do some paid social so I can really promote this program and scale it, or whatever those things are. That's how you make the case to get the resourcing to grow your program.
And I bring that up because you've done a really good job of working with the marketing team, which I know you're on, which that's where you really got to start showing value there, because that's the team you're on. I'm not saying you don't in other places. So you've done a really good job of showing value through deals closed, through, paying for your, I've influenced this much revenue. And as a matter of fact, we've actually brought in this much. So that's, in my opinion, where we need to start going to the product team, where we need to go to the customer team, whether it's renewals, expansion, or when you think of product adoption, ideation, scores on, how customers are feeling, you know what I mean? Like, and so how do we get to that level, which, look, what you've accomplished already, is really cool in the marketing team, and what you're going to do with the product team sounds, very similar to what you're trying to do there. But we have to go to each of those departments and do the same thing, right? Because every one of them think differently. Not everybody cares about revenue. I mean, they care about revenue, but that's not their metric, and that's not what they care about the most, right?
Right. Like the first question we're going to have as we engage on this product feedback project is, okay, product teams, what are the KPIs you're measuring things on? Yeah. How are you looking at this stuff, and how can we bring the community data into that? Or what data do we need to be collecting so that we can bring community information into that in a more effective way? It helps all of us learn more about how the business operates too. And something I thought of earlier when you were talking about this marketing person that you're working with, right? Yeah. And now he's building this new skill set by working with you. This offers career pathing in both directions. It offers people in other teams an opportunity to move in the direction of community. It also offers community professionals an opportunity to grow and expand their skill sets into other directions. And I think that that's a really valuable thing as well, because most careers are pretty long. You're talking a couple decades of working, and it's important to have diverse skill sets and be able to do new and different things and learn about it. And you don't want to have just like, I am a community professional and that is all I know how to do. Right. By working so cross-functionally, you're creating not only value for the business, but value for yourself as well. And I think that's,
this kid is
a side note, but it's important.
No, I think, when you look at this kid, like he's out of college, like just a couple of years, he was an intern for us, a year ago or a year and a half ago, now he's doing all kinds of, they're very tactical things, but what he's doing is learning skills on what, why is he doing, like this chat thing, for the main website. He's learning how, leads come in and things like that. And then now he's doing community stuff. Hey, here's some tactical things to do. And then I kind of explained to him, here's why these tactical things are important. You are contributing to a bigger picture thing, but I need these things done so that I can get to this thing up here. Right. And so, I'm trying to his boss is trying to teach him about things on the main website, swag stuff he owns, he's learning how, people are incentivized in different ways, so there's lots of opportunity for this kid to really just grow in his career, and he gets to pick what he wants, and then he'll be diverse within his, learning, on all things community, marketing, et cetera.
Well, and how amazing would it be if we can have that really throughout the business, where you've got somebody in almost every team that understands the community side of things. That brings me over to think about this whole trend of community-led businesses, right? And how do you become a community-led business? It's not by having a small but mighty community team that's taking over the world. It's by getting every person in the company thinking about community and thinking, understanding how it operates and having a stake in it and having a role in making it work well, right? It's not just about, I think we've talked a lot about this idea of how do you report out? How do you tell your story? How do you communicate out? But we also have to go the other direction. How do you get people on other teams trained up and thinking about it and having a stake in it and seeing value out of it directly beyond a dashboard?
And that's a big thing, because think about it. These people outside of, let's say, community are thinking about other things. So to really continue to get their time and to really kind of embed community mind, I mean, you have to show true value, right? So I think the key is to evangelize what you do on a consistent basis, right? And then at some point they come to you, like this Alliance dude. He came to me, a month ago, and we worked together. But I've got to continue that relationship down the road, because I want him to continue to bring partners to me to help me do thought leadership and really partner with us, to do things. So, it's not an easy thing to just, for us to say it is great, but you've really got to build those relationships internally with those people. Even for you, to have 50% of that, person's time, well, they're embedded in that product team. And over time, they get sucked into doing whatever their daily jobs are into that product, that you, Nicole, have to remind that leader and that person, hey, let's continue to do these things. We're doing a good job, and that job will morph. But, it's still going to be, an opportunity for you to continue to bring that and lure that person in to do those things, because they are still with that other team, right? And so you have to remember that. You have to keep bringing it up. You have to keep, teaching and preaching and whatever you want to call it, so but I think it's awesome what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Well, we've covered a lot of different territory today in terms of thinking about aligning to reporting metrics, thinking about how you get, make your team a center of excellence and do a more distributed model, bringing other people into the community space. It all comes back to the business at the end of the day, though, right? It all comes back to how do you balance what your community needs and what your business needs, and find that intersection of the Venn diagram, and boom, there's your community stuff. And that looks like numbers, that looks like training, that looks like programming, that looks like content. All of those things have to align on both sides. And we're just here trying to help everybody in the community industry figure out how to actually action that and do it, right?
That was a great summary, and I love that. And it's a great Peers Over Beers. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel, and
I'm Nicole Saunders.
Thanks, Nicole.
Have a great day.